Browne, Brendan Martin in Ocala, Florida. Got a great show. I'm in Memphis. Love the coffee cup. It is Sidelines, SEC Sidelines Sports Network, the Friday edition. Got a great show today. Now, take a picture with your cell phone of the QR codes. We are live on X, Twitter, Twix, we call it in the South, Facebook, YouTube, 8 channels simultaneously. Share and like. You have no idea what that means to us. And as we always say, thank you more than you know for your support. We are really, really growing. About a year and a half into this format, and we've got a great lineup today. One of the most accomplished authors, football minds, and just good people in college football. Ivan Maisel will be joining us to talk about his new book, Frank Leahey, The Enigma of Notre Dame. Frank Duffy up in Big Canoe. Doug Dean in Birmingham. So let's go ahead and get started on this Friday, October 17th. Where's the fall going? But it's football season.
Beautiful. It's beautiful here in Florida, I'll tell you that. So we're excited. Thanks for everyone who joins us this week. And by the way, listen to Rob. The QR code, if you're watching on your phone, just do a screen grab.
Yeah.
Then do your QR reader and you go right there, or you can just search for us on Sidelines with Rob Browne. With that, we'll bring in your guests, Sir Steve and Maisel and Frank Duffy. Welcome to the program, gentlemen.
Morning, everybody. Ivan, it was interesting. Monday night at the Touchdown Club in Memphis, Rich Clark, the executive director of the College Football Playoff Committee, was our speaker, and he had a lot of praise for you. He said, being in that room, and he's 38 years in the Air Force, lieutenant general, and he's my age, and he said, "Don't call me general." I'm like, I can't help but call you general, but I've gotten to know him here the last couple of years since he came on, and he's been on our show. It's just one of the good people in football, as you are. Talked about your mind and what you bring to the table. And I cannot give you enough praise also for what you did in 2019 for the 150th anniversary of college football. You genuinely love the game, and no matter what happens, you make us love it even more. So I'm going to put the ball in your hands, talk about your book and college football and where you think we're going.
Okay, well, thank you for that introduction. I'm not sure that was deserved, but here's the book, American Coach. And,
right.
The subtitle is The Triumph and Tragedy of Notre Dame legend Frank Leahey. And, Frank, everybody knows the name Frank Leahey, but it just dawned on me as I was working on the 2019 project. I didn't really know much about him. And the two things that struck me was that he's got the second best winning percentage of anybody in the history of the game to Knute Rockne, who he played for at Notre Dame. And he still is second for coaches who have coached 10 years, and that's the standard the NCAA uses. And it took him 13 years to be elected to the College Football Hall of Fame. And so those were the threads I started pulling on. And what I found was a guy that was really in a lot of ways emblematic of America in the 20th century. He was a bootstrap guy. He came from nowhere with not much. He grew up on the prairie in South Dakota. Yeah. But Notre Dame offered him a hand up, and he loved Notre Dame like he loved little else in the world. And he poured all that energy into winning football games. That was what drove him more than his health, more than his family. He just had to win football games at Notre Dame, and he was very good at it, but at the cost of his health, at the cost of his family relationships. And that's kind of an American story too, guys that just get their priorities skewed in the pursuit of success.
Let me ask you, in the 40s, he won 4 national championships. And, my dad just passed away in July. He was 97. He grew up, in Memphis. He used to sneak into Crump Stadium, go to the double headers down by the UT Medical School, UT and Mississippi State and Memphis Ole Miss games. But he said everybody, he went to Christian Brothers High School as well, was a Notre Dame fan. There's not another. Frank's an Irish Catholic from New Orleans. There's nothing like them for college football. And, I'm friends with guy in the touchdown club whose son is Marcus Freeman's agent. And it's just fascinating. He said, you can be the fan of any school in America, but when you go to South Bend and do you think in the 40s with World War II and all that happened, is that when they cemented themselves as a team with a fan base like no other?
Well, yes. That was a fascinating part of his story to me, because I think you can make a pretty good case that Leahey is who made Notre Dame Notre Dame. Because until Leahey came along, the success that Notre Dame had really belonged only to Rockne.
Yeah.
And it could have been a deal like we've seen at so many schools where there was one great coach and nobody ever replicated it.
Yeah.
But Leahey came in and was every bit as successful as Rockne, and you can argue whether he was more successful based on his schedules were stronger, but that's a debate for another time.
Yeah.
But my point is, he made Notre Dame into the monolithic Notre Dame, and the other part of that era in the 40s was, and what I really wanted to evoke with the book, and that's why there's a fedora on the cover, right?
That's right.
People wore fedoras.
Yes, sir.
Is just what Notre Dame meant to the American Catholic community.
Yeah,
it was a lifeline. It was the ticket into being accepted by the greater society, because there was a lot of anti-Catholic sentiment in America before, even after the war.
Yeah.
And, everybody felt like Leahey, legitimized them in some way with the rest of the American community. And that was a cool part of the story too.
Ivan, you had three choices. You could be a cop, a fireman, or a Notre Dame fan. Those were your three choices growing up. But Ivan, being a great writer like you are, also the thing that I think made Notre Dame so special in the 40s and the 50s was the era of radio, where you literally listened to the stories. You didn't see them. That came with Ara Parseghian later. You listened to the stories, and you were able to almost spin these yarns of how great Notre Dame was listening on the radio. And Notre Dame was one of those brands that was listened to nationwide. I mean, the big NBCs and ABCs and CBSs of the radio world would carry their games. And I think that also added to the lore of Leahey and what he did with those 4 championships. And look, I agree with you. I don't think there's a lore of Knute Rockne if there isn't a Leahey cementing the ground of 4 national championships to bring them into this era, that bridge that gap. And in the 40s, people lived and died on the radio. You heard reports from World War II. You heard your news reports from the radio. So I think that's a big part, and I'm assuming you built that into the book that you had as well. That Americana lore, hearing that crackle of Notre Dame games over the airwaves.
Well, the couple of things come to mind. One is that as many as 10 different radio stations or networks would broadcast the Notre Dame games. I mean, it was just crazy how many radio teams there were there.
Wow. 2,
I remember Vince Dooley telling me one time that growing up in Mobile, Catholic, he would lay down on the floor of his living room with his head underneath the giant radio they had in the living room, because that's how close he wanted to be to the Notre Dame game. And he said, once he started going to the Hall of Fame dinners in New York, and he was a coach, he was a head coach at an SEC school. He said, and when I saw Johnny Lujack in person, he said, my knees got weak, and then I got to meet him, and he was like, oh my goodness.
And under that big radio, you were literally bathed in the golden glow.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Ivan, before I go to Doug Dean, another Irish Catholic from Birmingham, when all my friends, we were in college, I was at Auburn, they were at Tennessee. Bubba Halliday and his son William was one of my interns, who's now writing for Auburn Undercover. You know who one of their teachers was at UT? Lindsey Nelson. And who can forget Saturday afternoons? O'Reilly back to O'Malley, back to Fitzgerald on the 42-yard line. Here come the Irish.
Here come Hanratty to hold for the extra point.
You left out a few skis in there.
That was the lineman. That was the lineman.
That's right. Doug, jump in here.
Yeah. Doug Dean, not from Birmingham, at Alice Beach right now, and you're not, Rob. But
nice.
Ivan Maisel, what an honor to get to talk to you. I really enjoyed your especially your writing. Not to discount your great work on air as with ESPN and elsewhere, but I'm as an English major myself, I'm sort of lamenting and hoping I'm wrong about this, that we don't have enough readers of actual books anymore.
You're lamenting it. Yeah.
Everything's pushed into YouTube and sound bites, and Twitter started all this limiting the number of characters, and but that can revive. Maybe it's the delivery or packaging of it. Maybe books by audio will recapture a generation of people that actually read books. But I want you to talk about words, Ivan, and that sports uniquely, not solely, but sports uniquely creates these moments that great writers like Ivan Maisel can do their best to join the ranks of Grantland Rice, outlined against a blue-gray October sky, or maybe my favorite, John Underwood on that Miami-Nebraska game. Underwood wrote, he sent his sacrificial lambs out to slaughter the butcher.
Or Ivan probably remembers one of his first mentors at the AJC back in the day, Furman Bisher.
Yeah. Sure. And then, but here's Ivan Maisel. I want to do you honor. And I'm certain I did not pick what you would be the proudest phrases that you turned, but here's one that got me in the wake of the passing of the great Mike Leach. I think that article you wrote was award-winning, Ivan, but he, quote, "If you put a mic in front of Leach and turn it on, the hard part of your day was done." That's beautiful writing, Ivan. Just talk about, do we still have a new generation of great writers coming forward, especially in the sports realm? Your thoughts?
Oh, I think we do, and I am heartened if I tell you that, my book's been out a month and, I get sales reports and it's still about 80% hardcover, 10% ebook, 10% audio. So people are reading. Somebody's reading, maybe it's everybody that's 50 and older. I don't know, but, I am heartened by the fact that, we as a species have been telling each other stories since we were drawing, stick figures on cave walls. So after that, it's just, how do you deliver it? And, I'm a word guy. I have two daughters that are on either side of 30, and, they will used to give me grief about, why aren't you on Insta? Why aren't you on TikTok? And I was like, because I think in words, I don't think in pictures. Yeah. And,
me too.
Yeah. And it's amazing that children that age can still roll their eyes.
I think Doug, some audio. I think that was maybe Doug. Okay. Well, Ivan, just to give you a heart and feel, some of us still like the feel of pulp on our hands, and having a great book to be able to sit and read it's a lost art. You're exactly right in this go-go world, but a comfortable chair, good lighting, because those of us that are now 64 have to have these eye cheaters and the lights. But fear not, those of us that like a good yarn will sit and read a great book. So I am definitely going to get your Leahey book, because I think the Notre Dame dynamic of the success that they've had in football and what it's meant to so many people, and to have Frank Leahey almost being an afterthought as one of their coaches, and yet he had the success that he had. It's going to be a fantastic read. I know it is, and I'm definitely going to be one of your readers.
And Ivan, I want to say something. Pete Cordelli, a friend of mine who coached at Notre Dame, coached with Lou Holtz for 14 years. I've been friends with Pete for 31 years. He's on my show on Mondays with Ellis Johnson and Dave Bartu. He just published his new book about, making the grade, how to get a scholarship. Notice of all the places he coached, look who's on the cover. And, Pete being from a big Italian Catholic family from right out in the Chamonix, PA, there is nothing like it. I'm an Episcopal convert, but when you look at college football, and I'm an Auburn grad, he's LSU, and Doug's Auburn, Brendan, Gator Bait Media. If you are Catholic, you are always going to come back to it. And it's one of those stories about college football. When we were kids, we sometimes got frustrated, but Notre Dame still, they are as relevant today as they were 40, 50 years ago. And this book it's like lifting weights with your brain, Ivan. I'm ordering it as soon as I get off the show.
Great. Yeah. And I grew up in Mobile. I grew up in the 70s when, Notre Dame regularly broke Alabama Crimson Tide hearts every year or two. And so I went up, the first time I covered a game there, I went up going, all right, here we go. How big a deal can this be? It's terrific. If you're a college football fan, you need to go to Notre Dame at least once. And if you go once, you'll probably go back. It's just a beautiful campus, and everybody is so enamored with football and with college football, and dress warmly. Yeah. It's a special place.
Ivan, I was a 12-year-old boy and got to go to the Sugar Bowl in Old Tulane Stadium in 1973 when Notre Dame played Alabama for the national championship. We had a 1-2, and the spectacle that night was it was off the charts. So not being up in South Bend, I saw it in Old Tulane Stadium with Bear Bryant under one goalpost, smoking Chesterfields while he's watching his team doing calisthenics. Yep. And I can still see the white socks of Eric Parsegian running up and down the other sideline for Notre Dame. It was just iconic. And it really was a North versus South. Your loyalties were in different places. I liked both teams really at the time. Before I really became an LSU fan, I was a Tulane fan at the time, and I liked Alabama. But that night, that setting, and that game, which produced an incredible game. It was a 1-point game, fantastic. Yes. That truly cemented me. Like to Rob's point, the next morning, I'm waiting for Lindsey Nelson's recap of the Sugar Bowl. Yep. After 3 plays and a Notre Dame punt, we will proceed to the action. That was the soundtrack of being young and growing up.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, that was I think Bryant lost 4 games to Parsegian by a total of 13 points. It were just all painful losses if you were an Alabama fan. Yep. And I grew up in an Alabama house. But what a great, the level of respect between the schools and between the coaches. And to this day, I think everybody who goes to Notre Dame or whose team plays Notre Dame has an appreciation for what it has been to college football and what it still is.
When I was in 1986, I had been traveled in Europe that summer and met some Notre Dame fans, a federal judge from Terre Haute, Mike Kern. And we later went over there and visited his relatives in Clifton and Roundstone and Galway Bay. There's Notre Dame fans over there. It was like, oh yeah, wow, they really got. So 1986, Auburn's playing Western Carolina, and they were like, hey, Rob, we're coming down to Birmingham. That's when Alabama played at Notre Dame at Legion Field. So I go there. We're at the Sheraton in downtown Birmingham. And I've got some time to kill waiting for them to meet me. And I'm sitting in the lobby. And it's like a who's who of the Alabama and Notre Dame and the college football aristocracy. And I'm just listening to these conversations. And I went to the game the next day and sat with the Douglas family, Miss Douglas and Paul Douglas and George Douglas, all Memphis Notre Dame grads. And what I was most impressed by, was the football IQ of the Notre Dame people, but the absolute reverence for the game. And I know people will say, young people don't read. I'm getting texts, they don't have bookshelves. Well, that's their fault. My 90-year-old mother reads 2 books a week, still reads 2 books a week. And the power of the written, and the best guests, Frank will agree with me, and so are the writers, because you think about what you're saying. So as you look at big picture college football, you're on that college football playoff committee. And as I said, Rich Clark is a huge fan. He just says, I just listen when I'm around Ivan. But that didn't happen by accident. You've traveled all over. You're a Stanford grad, which, as they say in the South, that ain't nothing. That's a big deal. So let's just talk about your role in the CFP, and you take it from there.
Okay. I went to Stanford from Mobile, and I spent my whole, last 6 weeks of high school. People would say, "Oh, you going up to Samford, huh?" And I go, "Yeah. Yeah, you got it." I've only been to 2 meetings, guys, and we actually have a third meeting Sunday and Monday, this weekend. But what has impressed me about the guys I'm with, and what Rich has fomented amongst us is he's done a lot of team building in the 2 meetings we've had, and B, the only agenda that I've been able to glean is get it right, and there is just an enormous cache of data available to us, and we have new metrics, and everybody's excited about the new metrics, and what they've said to us, you're not beholden to use any particular metric. You use the one that makes the most sense to you, and if there's one that's not here that you want, just tell us and we'll go get it. There's Tom Osborne was enamored with starting field position of the 2 teams, and what was the difference between the 2. And he thought that told a lot about the relative strengths, the average starting field position. Yeah. And that stat, Osborne has rotated off the committee. We still get that stat, and everybody calls it the Osborne stat. So, if there was something, and I spent the first 2 weeks of the season, they gave me when I got on the committee, they gave me an iPad, which was pretty cool, and on Sunday mornings they upload video of all the games from the 15 to 20 games into the iPad, and so I can look at them, and they've stripped them of commercials and halftime and the between play, baloney that we hear, and I love play-by-play guys and color guys.
Of course,
I'm not casting any aspersion.
Of course,
but it's all that stuff's available, and I spent the first couple of weeks trying to watch every game, and I was exhausted, and I finally thought, I've been doing this a long time, and that's why they asked me to be on the committee. I'm just going to keep doing it the way I've always done it, and I'll find out whether that's any good or not when we actually start ranking teams in a couple of weeks. Rating, not ranking.
Yeah. Well, the old saying from Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. You guys have great responsibility.
Yeah.
And you have the quality of the game in your hands. I mean, obviously you, like others, have to take this very seriously. But, the old thing is you don't want to overthink it. I would think the smell test is also pretty good when you get down to the end, when you're crunching all the numbers. Does this make sense? And the numbers that, the Osborne effect or any other effect or any other process protocol that you guys are getting, at the end of the day, as a college football fan, which really is what got you on that committee, does this make sense? Does this make sense from a realistic standpoint? And, we've had talks with people on the committee, Rob, on our show going back to 2019.
Yeah.
And you guys get great room service and great steaks, and y'all get feted. And I'm sure it's like living in heaven. But you guys, when you come out of that room and that white smoke, we've had like 1,000 Catholic references, but when the white smoke goes up at the end of the, who goes into the 12-team playoff, you guys have to live with those results. And so I envy you, and I'm a little, it would be very, very overwhelming to be in that room, I would think. And so I'm impressed that you have stepped up to do this as a college football fan and as somebody that's very knowledgeable. So
well,
kudos for you.
I'll tell you a quick story. When they called me about a year ago, it's probably last November, to ask if I would want to interview to be on the committee, I said, I don't know. Let me think about it, because I knew how much work is involved. And I went downstairs and said to my wife, Meg, an Irish Catholic girl,
if you're counting at home, if you have the over eight, you can go cash your ticket.
No, I said, they just called me and asked me if I want to interview for the committee. I don't know if I want to do that. And she, smiled at me very sweetly and said, "What are you, nuts? Of course you're going to do that."
Yeah.
You can't pass that up.
So,
yeah. Well, Ivan, I mean, college football in the South, there's some people that think the SEC should have 11 teams, and then Notre Dame. I mean, it's just that much. But I'm a big believer, and we focus mainly on the SEC, but I call it the tectonic plate theory. We had anytime we're talking about SEC, there's reverberations to the Big Ten, the ACC, the Big 12, and vice versa. And you are lucky you travel around the country. Football matters. I mean, you go to Laramie, Wyoming, the High Altitude Performance Center at 7,300 feet. They love the rodeo. It's like Coach Dye said, the only state 12 months a year, it's Alabama. He said in North Carolina in the summer, they're talking about the Four Corners. And in Wyoming, when's the rodeo coming? When's Rip going to be there? But it does matter nationwide. I'm starting to see a revival of the love of college football. And when you get teams in from kind of weird places, could you imagine what it would mean to the state of North Dakota if North Dakota State University, the Bison, got in there? I mean, I think the entire state would shut down. The Eggman up on Crowley's Ridge, my guy that I get my farm fresh eggs from, he is the biggest Bison fan in the world. He watches his show every day. But I'm just curious your thoughts about that.
Well, we were all scared to death of what the portal would do and what paying players would do and what the implosion of the Pac-12 would do. And ratings are up. And I think part of the fact that ratings are up is that we have all these new rivalries that we're able to see. All of a sudden, Indiana, Oregon, and really, who didn't think that would be a big game a few years ago?
Yeah, of course. I always knew it.
I mean, USC, Michigan last week. That's a regular season game now, and Oklahoma, Alabama in a couple of weeks. So I think that's contributed, but I think the 12-team playoff has contributed because the theory when they expanded was, in November we'll now have 20 to 25 fan bases that are engaged with the possibility, that they're going to the playoff rather than 5 or 6 the way it used to be. Yeah. And I think also, and you can't put a gauge on that. I don't know how you gauge it, but I think betting has increased interest too. And, that's not a all great thing. There are problems with it, but I think there is heightened interest because of that.
Yeah. Doug, jump back in here with Ivan Maisel. This is great.
Sorry for my tech problems. Ivan, we're going to hypothetically appoint you commissioner of college football for a moment. And my first assignment to you, if I'm on that governance board, is tell us how you would fix the Birmingham Command Center and the replay. That if you ask some Auburn people, the word abomination comes to mind. But there's no transparency. There's this cloak and dagger. We don't know who's in the Birmingham Command Center. ACC is on the other end of the continuum. I don't know if I like it better. You get to hear the audio of what they're talking about and deciding. What are some things, just officiating in general, what steps would you take to give us better quality?
Well, look, I'm a journalist. The more open you can be, the better I think it is. I think the ACC thing is great. And what nobody really talks about that I find interesting is that we're totally at the mercy of how many cameras the network that's televising the game has in the stadium, and where do they put them, and at what angle.
And every game's different.
Yeah, and we saw that with Auburn and Georgia Saturday night, and then and beyond that, you're at the mercy of, you may have the camera in the right place and there's a player standing in front of it, which I think was one of the issues, with that, with Jackson Arnold going over too, so it's never going to be perfect, and what a revelation that is by me. But there are, the more you can do, and the more you can lay your cards on the table and say, nobody's got an agenda here. We're doing the best we can, and this is what we decided. I don't know why the SEC is so secretive, and I'm sure they got their reasons, but the ACC is being wide open, and people like it, and the league hasn't disbanded because they became all open. So I think the SEC should take a look at that.
A quick footnote on the same subject that's a little technical, but I am told that, the process of slowing down to glacial speeds, a replay can distort any of our human beings, got the limitations of your eyesight. And it's like it changes what we mean by was a pass caught? Was it possessed before he hit the ground or not? It doesn't look like actual football, some of the judgments they're making.
Well, that replay at Auburn looked like it was a photo from the Civil War era. I mean, that was horrible.
Yeah.
I don't know how you could even see
it was horrible.
that. Yeah, it was crazy.
Matthew Brady was on the sidelines.
Big puff of smoke behind the cloak and dagger.
And look, Doug, honest to God, to get into the SEC replay booth in Birmingham, you got a better shot of getting into the vault at Coke to get the formula. And look, I'm not saying it's Alabama sided, but I'll bet you there's crimson somewhere in that room.
No.
I quote on this show many times, Ivan, you're welcome to use my late father's quote. He said, Doug, just because you're paranoid does not mean they're not out to get you.
Yeah. Ivan, we talk about transparency. I like what you like. In the state of Tennessee, I know we have sunshine laws. These are state universities. At some point, isn't somebody going to push and say, why can't writers going to practice? When I was at Auburn, David Housel and Buddy Davidson would send me from the sports information office. They let me work there in high school. And man, I got my ass chewed out by David a few times. You do not ever cheer in the press box. You know the rules. And but you never say anything disparaging about the opponent. You are representing X school, in this case, Auburn, whatever. Man, on that. But I will tell you one of the coolest things I ever did. 1981, 14-12, Auburn beat Florida. Charlie Pell in his grave is still pissed off. That field goal, he thought it was good. They said it wasn't. But after the game, David took me outside, and I met one of the coolest people, a journalist, a great writer from the Gainesville Sun named Jack Hairston, or Jack Harston, I believe. Hairston. And they opened up the trunk. David opened up the trunk, and we had some cocktail. It was just cool. Now, I mean, and to hear them tell the stories that only journalists can tell. I wanted to ask you, are you teaching by chance? How important what you do? We've got to keep that going.
I am not teaching. I will speak in the classes that my friends teach.
Okay.
Because then I don't have to grade papers.
Smart.
And I'm happy to, I have to stop and think how many schools I know professors at now. Gene Wojciechowski's teaching in Knoxville. I know several people at Northwestern, a couple at Georgia. I'm actually speaking. There's a little school up here about halfway between me and Bristol, Quinnipiac, which won the men's hockey title a couple of years ago. I'm speaking up there in about a week after next. So, I'll get up there and talk and try to, and talk about story writing and sorry, my lamp is blinking on and off here.
You're good.
But yeah, I'm not I haven't gotten the teaching bug just yet.
Let's go back to the other part of the continuum. Who were your mentors coming up? I mentioned Furman Bisher at AJC when you were coming out. Who were your mentors, or who were the writers that you tried to emulate when you were coming up?
Well, I think everybody, my age, our age, who came up reading Sports Illustrated idolized Dan Jenkins, and
great writer.
I was a fact checker at Sports Illustrated in the '80s when Dan was still there. His daughter Sally, who pound for pound is the best sports writer in the country, in my opinion. Sally and I worked on the Stanford Daily together.
Wow.
And I still remember sitting at the typewriter in the Daily office, and Dan walked in to our little sports area, and I like needed surgery to close my jaw.
Yeah.
And he turned out to be a wonderful man, and he was had an open door in terms of mentoring any question I had, and loved college football more than any human being I've ever met. And Dan died, I think, 5-6 years ago. I think it was before COVID. And right up until he died, if I emailed him something about college football, I got a response immediately. And, he just, so Dan and Red Smith, I certainly didn't know, but that was a guy I always tried to read and emulate. And Red Smith played a really big role in this book that I wrote, because he covered Frank Leahey a lot, and he was such a wonderful writer that I made it a point to find all the columns he wrote about Frank Leahey, and they were very helpful to me.
Yeah.
Well, bringing up Sports Illustrated, it was the must watch and must read every week. Frank DeFord, Rick Riley, all those writers, just fabulous. So y'all did an awesome job. Sorry, Brendan, I didn't mean to step on you. I was just
that's all right. Hi, Frank. Brendan Martin, my father's buddy Martin. So you probably heard him running around those parts. And I hear him talking.
Seem to have overcome that pretty well.
Yeah, I've tried. I try to work out and everything, but. My microphone went bad. Anyway, I've read some of a little bit of your book the other night, forward on it, and wrote some notes down. But I wanted to know what really drew you to this story. You were describing him as the forgotten legend, despite his remarkable winning percentage and national championships at Notre Dame. Like, what drew you to this story?
Well, Brendan, part of it was, the bottom line was he had become a name in a record book, and Rockne is Rockne, and we all know who Rockne was, and they made a movie about him, and he's a president played George Gipp in the movie, and Rockne got a stamp. And Leahey was just a name in a record book. Wow. And I thought, well, maybe I should write something about him. And I went and looked. I said, but I'm not going to write a book if everybody else has written a book, if there's nothing else to say. And I combed through Amazon. I combed through used book websites. And I couldn't find a book.
Wow.
He had written there was a really elegant writer on the West Coast named Wells Twombly in the 70s who ghost wrote Leahey's autobiography. It was published a year after Leahey died. It came out in 1974, and that was really it. Nothing had been of any substance had been written about Leahey in book form in 50 years. So, I'm not. I'm not totally just interested in the story. Somebody's got to buy it. I thought there's a lot of Notre Dame fans out there, and here you got this.
Well, that was my next question. From my perspective, I've heard my dad and we've come up with ideas for a million things. Documentaries had great, stories about him hiring guys like Rick Riley. I always tell him, we got to get your verbal history down, to talk about what happened. But it's hard to get a story and sell a story.
Yes.
It's harder than people think because it's got to have a national perspective. It can't be hyper local. It can't even be regional, especially for books, right?
Right.
So was that part of your thinking here?
Absolutely. I mean,
Great question.
If you're going to scratch an itch and to write a book, there's got to be, if you want somebody to pay you to write it, there's got to be, when you write a book proposal, let me start there. You write a sample chapter, you write a summary of every other chapter, and you write a marketing plan. Who's going to buy this book? Because, why should you pay me money? And Notre Dame's Notre Dame. I mean, they got fans everywhere, and one of the things I am trying to do, in addition to appearing in bookstores, is reach out to Notre Dame alumni clubs. Next week, I'm speaking to 4 alumni clubs in 4 nights, in Houston, and then I'm flying out to LA, Orange County, San Diego. So, and they're big, vibrant Notre Dame alumni clubs all in every major city in America. So, that part was convenient.
Yeah. Ivan, we'll keep you, if you don't mind, a few more minutes, we'll let you go. First off, thank you more than you know for sharing your time with us. This means the world to us. Yeah. And we will promote your book in every way. And I'm going to be sharing the link to, in my hunting club with 18 members, I think we have 11 Catholics. So,
great.
But I will tell you, even it doesn't matter whether you're a Notre Dame fan or not. I think, and I'm not going to say I came up with it. I believe I heard you say, maybe you were talking about this book. You said he was Nick Saban before Nick Saban, if you think about his record.
Oh, yeah.
Frank Leahey. And so it's just a cool story about college football and the history, the traditions, and the heroes is what this show's all about. So without that, I mean, we kind of lose it. And, you're referencing Dan Jenkins. I got to see Furman Bisher arguing with David Housel one Sunday afternoon about Bob Harris, a defensive back at Auburn, and Jim Bob Harris at Alabama from Athens. Yeah. He goes, if he didn't have on that crimson jersey, Bob Harris would be an All-American and not Jim Bob. And Furman said he had on, of course, a V-neck cashmere sweater. He was the consummate gentleman. And I think about, Philip Marshall when he's on here. We have Kirk McNair. I mean, the stories, and I hope this will not be your last book, because I know it's a lot of time, but it is just, and Doug is a gifted writer. Just the ability to tell stories. Doug, jump back in here a few more minutes before Ivan has to go.
Ivan, as one of my favorite writers, I have to ask you, and there's a Stanford, I know you're a proud Stanford grad. Did you also have a stint at Stanford Daily, did you say?
I did, yeah.
Okay, well, you may have heard of a game ending that's come to be called the Kick Six.
Yes.
So
I was there.
Listen, anyone who had a keyboard and called themselves a journalist back then had to write about the Kick Six game, and who can blame them? It was so epic. And I was sitting in the south end zone on my birthday to get to watch that unfold. The end zone that Davis caught the kick that was just inches short.
Nice.
But one of my favorite pieces was, of all things, by a then Stanford student, Winston Shee. The last name is S-H-I.
Yeah.
You will thank me later if you find that when it's convenient for you and read his article. It was gratuitous a little bit, but I will forgive that youthful mistake, considering how monumental that improbable ending was. But she went on to say, in an email he sent me that he wanted me to share with the Auburn people, the popularity of the column cemented my reputation, he said, at Stanford Daily. It boosted a relative latecomer to managing editorship just 2 months later.
Wow.
We don't think of events help create great writing and great writers, don't they, Ivan?
Oh, absolutely. And because all the great, when I think of great stories that I love, they're not about, the Braves beating the Padres 12-1 on August 7th. They're games we remember. Yeah. And I remember I had an email friendship with Winston Shee, and he was a good writer. I don't know what he's doing now, but I brought up Red Smith earlier. Red Smith, the column I wrote about the kick six, you're sitting in the press box and what you've just witnessed is, a once in a lifetime event, and, don't screw it up. And I was sitting at my laptop and I thought of Red Smith's lead after Bobby Thompson hit the shot heard round the world, in 1951 to win the National League pennant. The Giants beat the Dodgers. And Red Smith's line was, "The art of fiction is dead." And because what just happened,
couldn't be written. Yeah.
And I just
couldn't make it up.
Exactly. And I kind of got that into my head, and that helped me write my lead for the kick six. And it was turned out to be, one of my favorite stories
That's awesome.
that I ever did.
Ivan, what's your favorite sport to write about? And in that genre, what is your favorite book or piece that you wrote?
Oh, well, college football. I mean, I started out as a fact checker at Sports Illustrated covering baseball. And I did that for 5 years, and that almost cured me of my love of baseball. So I didn't get, and I tell young people this all the time, I made a career out of covering college football. I didn't get to it until my third job when I was 27 years old. So, sometimes you have to be patient before you find what you want to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, because in the days of before the internet, I covered whatever was in season. So I used to cover college basketball and golf, and cycle back to football. And then
I like your golf pieces. Yeah. You did great in golf. Yeah.
Once the internet came along, I just stuck with college football 12 months a year because people would read it 12 months a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, my favorite, having said all that, probably there were the two stories I think of were both relatively personal. One was the editor at the Stanford Daily about 20 years ago called me and said, "We have the smartest people in the world teaching on this campus. Come out here and ask them why it's important that we beat Cal," which was such a great idea. I mean, I talked to an anthropology professor, the dean of religious studies, a guy who studied bonobos in Africa. And, and basically what it came down to is we are hardwired as a species for us to beat them.
Tribal. It's tribal.
Tribal.
Yeah.
So, I had great fun doing that. And the other story I did, my father was, before I was born, was the basketball coach at Murphy High School in Mobile, where he had gone to school and where I went to school. And in 1956, they won the state championship. First Mobile school to do it. He was 30 years old and he quit after 4 months later. And, and I had asked him when I was a teenager, after he had gone into business, I said, "Why did you quit coaching? It'd be really cool if you were still the coach at Murphy." And he said, he just kind of looked at me, and he had a great sense of humor and was a great storyteller too. He said, either I could coach or you could eat.
Yeah.
So, but what I did was I went and found his players, and I wrote a story about him as a coach, since I had never been able to see it.
Yeah.
And it ran in Sports Illustrated.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
That was my favorite story.
Well, Ivan, I want Brad Bellamy, one of our sponsors, Landers Ford's general manager, in the Touchdown Club is everything happens because of Landers Ford. They bring the speakers in and everything. So, Brad, this is Ivan Maisel talked about his book, Frank Leahey, The Enigma of Notre Dame. So just say hello, and then Ivan, we'll let you go, but tell people again how they can keep up with you. And we definitely look forward to doing this again. This has been one of the most memorable shows ever, without a doubt.
Well, thanks. Hey, Brad.
Good morning. My dad's my dad's actual first job was selling concessions at Stanford Stadium. So he grew up in Palo Alto.
Oh my God.
And, yeah. I bet you've got some wild and crazy stories from your days at Stanford, especially if you associate with the Stanford band at all.
No, I was in the library every night, Brad.
Of course.
I really can't help you. You can keep up with me at ivanmaisel.com. And I have a list there of dates where I'll be, talking about the book, signing books. And the book's available right there over the QR code. So I hope everybody grabs one, and thank y'all for having me.
Hey, absolutely. You're what we love about college football. Take care.
Nice talking to you, Ivan.
All right.
Exactly.
That was fun. And that, again, Brad, let's go. What's going on out at Landers right now? Poplar and Houston Levy. And I got to talk to Kent Ritchie and at the Touchdown Club Monday when Rich Clark was there. And I know you were out on special assignment, but man, what y'all do for the Touchdown Club? These speakers, Alyssa Lang is coming in Monday from SEC Network. Rich Clark was there. Thank you. As Gomer Powell would say, thank you. So talk about Landers and what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, even, in the spring series a couple years ago, Clark Lee came out, and all of a sudden they went on that historic run last year for Vanderbilt. And who would have ever thought that Vanderbilt would be a 2.5-point favorite to LSU? Frank, what would you have bet on the spread of this game 2 years ago? I mean,
oh my gosh, the first time they've been favored in an SEC game in 77 years. By the way, I don't want to step on you, but real quick, there's two numbers that scare me in the LSU Alabama game. The fact that Vanderbilt's a 2.5-point favorite, and the fact that 2 tickets are going for $450 in the upper deck of Commodore Stadium. Man, we have jumped the shark, boys. I'm just telling you with this new game, this new Vandy team.
Well, it's because there's about 75 seats at Commodore Stadium, Frank. So it's not
not with orange cones sitting in them.
Yeah, it's not Tiger Stadium in Baton Rouge. So, Rob, a lot of folks coming back this week from fall break.
Yep.
And it's the perfect time to come get a new ride. You've been with your kids all week. You've been driving across the state or down south to go to the beach.
Yeah.
And you realize, I don't like how it drives. I don't like how it sounds. What's that rattle? What's that noise? Why is my technology so bad? Yeah. I mean, the new Expedition, guys, as an example, blind spots no more. When you hit the left lane signal or the right lane signal, you actually have videos that show up that go right down the side of your vehicle. And that starts with the base level Expedition. You don't have to pay $95,000 for it. You can get that on the active $65,000 version. So we got brand new Expeditions, best inventory in the area, all priced, X-Plan pricing. We finished number 4 in the country in Expedition sales a couple of months ago. We had a great month again last week, and the last month in the top 50. So really excited about that. Also, we just launched a program. So typically with Ford and their incentives when it comes to military, it's always retirees, not veterans. Well, during Veterans Day promotion, started yesterday, an extra $1,000 of bonus cash for any veteran, first responder, active duty, retired military. So really excited to be able to take care of the people that take such great care of us. So that program kicked off yesterday and will run through Veterans Day. So we got that going on. F-150, we got great interest rates as well as up to over $10,000 off. So really excited about what we got going. Really excited about all the people that are going to come back from their trips and say it's time for a new car. So come out and check us out. And then also, we need to have more of your folks and your fans and your listeners take advantage of this, an extra $500 off for any of the SEC Sidelines audience. And that works for you guys on the call as well. So Rob, Frank, and Doug, it's Tom. Brendan, it's Tom. Come see us. I know, Brendan, you've been eyeing a Bronco for a while. We got a great 2-door that we just traded for too. So come check us out, LandersFordMemphis.com, our website, everything.
If I come down there, I'm doing a video with you, Brad. We're going on some test drives with that new Expedition. Let's do some videos. We'll do some promotional stuff.
Next Saturday, if all the stars align, we got a chance for game day to be here, Brendan. It's a great time to come check things out.
Perfect.
Yeah. They're going to make that announcement, I guess. And I wonder if it'll be
I'll
on
bring
Beale
my
Street.
Terry Bradshaw given. I have a truck or a Chevy Tahoe that's got 250,000 miles on it that Terry Bradshaw gave to my dad and I many years ago. I have that car. I'll drive that out to, and then we'll trade that in with you on a new Bronco. How about that?
Yeah. Let's go, man. And Rob, I think if it happens, it'll be at Liberty Park, because if it's 11 o'clock game time, I don't see a way that they would do it at Beale Street with an 11 o'clock start because it's too far away to be able to get fans into the game ahead of time. So But we need LSU to lose this weekend.
I
Frank,
was going to say, I would not count your chickens before they hatch, because let me tell you, Doug Dean is about to be right, as he normally is. We're about, in the next 2 weeks, we're going to have no undefeated SEC teams. The Great Pumpkin will get to the Great Pumpkin Patch with no SEC teams being undefeated. That's my promise. Georgia takes out the Rebs this week. We take out A&M next week. You watch.
Yeah.
Who's taking out Alabama?
Brad?
No, I mean undefeated, like totally undefeated.
Oh,
y'all lost that first one against Free Shoes University.
SEC undefeated ranks, Frank. That's why I was just want to get clarification. So I know you like.
Okay, we're coming to Tuscaloosa. We'll see what we can do against y'all.
Yeah.
That's better than playing in Baton Rouge for us.
Brad, good to see you. I'm curious. College football always benefits from a rivalry with a lot of bad blood. And is Alabama-Tennessee still? Is the venom is still what it has been in recent years? Your thoughts on that?
I think the venom's coming back. I think 17 years of dominance took away a little bit of the venom. I mean, just like my hatred of Tennessee from the late 90s growing up in Memphis, and it was half a city covered in orange, and those horrible orange windbreakers were everywhere. Tennessee
Shula brand.
And so from who I was then to who I am now, I mean, you kind of feel sorry for your little brother after a while, and they keep getting beat up. And so, I think that the rivalry, now that we've had back and forth, home and home, third year in a row that the number 11 team in the country is involved in this matchup, which I thought was interesting, that the rankings keep having one of these teams the same spot. But I think Alabama still wants to beat Tennessee. I think Auburn is probably, will always be number one. I think Tennessee is number two. I think if Alabama and Georgia played each other every year with Kirby Smart and the history there, I mean, I got to think Alabama's become public enemy number one for Georgia at this point.
Some of y'all will remember from the internet days, 10 stud, and I've forgotten who on Alabama's side that would go at it on a daily basis on the message board.
Oh, 10 stud. Oh, I remember him quite well. Roy Adams. The Touchdown Club meetings in Memphis, you couldn't get any better. Bill Harper, Logan Young, 10 stud. It was, someone ought to do a documentary on that. Talking about a 30 for 30. Another one that needs to be done is the greatest defensive coordinator in the history of defensive coordinators. The man from Epps, Alabama, over in the Black Belt, Brother Bill Oliver. I mean, that's a story that could be done. Brad, Doug, Brendan, Frank, fellow Americans, it's the first time this year we've got all 16 teams, 8 SEC games, and maybe the first time in conference history or something, we got 3 ranked versus ranked matchups. This is big stuff. What happens? Who is the best right now, according to The Athletic? You know what team has the highest grade in the conference? Texas A&M. And you know what, Brad Bellamy? For the first time since Jimmy Carter was in the White House, Vanderbilt is a favorite in an SEC game. The sun did come up this morning, Brad. I saw it.
Apocalypse.
Yeah, I mean, and I think strong probability that 2 of the undefeated in-conference SEC teams are done after this weekend. So I think that Ole Miss is definitely at risk, and I think between Arkansas and Tennessee, I think one of them might pull an upset. So Arkansas played Tennessee tough last weekend. Texas A&M, their defense has been incredible since that Notre Dame game, and but Arkansas hasn't been able to host this game over the last few years. Every one of these Texas A&M Arkansas games has been at Jerry World.
Jerry World, yeah.
And there's a lot of folks in Arkansas that have a strong affection for their interim head coach. And so I think the fans are going to come out in droves for a team that's lost 4 straight. And, I think that there's a chance in this game that Arkansas could pull the upset. So
especially one of those Arkansas fans who used to like riding on the back of that motorcycle.
It wasn't a motorcycle, Rick.
No, it wasn't. I guarantee you that wasn't. That was teed off husband.
Yeah, boyfriend.
Yeah.
The question is, we don't know if they ever got married, but I digress.
Allegedly.
Yes. Guys, what game, you've got Lane Kiffin going on the road to play at Georgia. What do y'all think happens?
Ass whipping coming.
Doug?
I'm telling you, Georgia got to lay it to him. Georgia was lucky to beat Auburn because that was BS. Auburn's gotten screwed 2 out of 3 weeks, but I'm telling you, I think Georgia's going to be it for them.
Hard for me to whine about the refs too much. I'll do it anyway, but Auburn's got its own worst enemy offensively. But I guess the Ole Miss Georgia game intrigues me the most, mainly because will Lane Kiffin take the next step to not, and he can drop that game and still make the playoff. But I actually, Duff, I'll be contrarian. I give Ole Miss a shot in that game because I think Georgia's still trying to figure out who it wants to be offensively.
Yeah. Right. We got to wrap it up. Carol Burnett, I'm so glad we had this time together. We need to start potting that music up, but of course we'd probably get dinged by the copyright people. Or
no, we can just look at the clock in the upper left-hand corner.
And we didn't mention about Billy Napier.
It's right there. It counts it down and everything.
Yeah.
We didn't mention Billy Napier. Cool. He's a dead man walking from what we're hearing from us and Brendan and on the internet.
Well,
I don't think he makes it.
I think everyone knows. I think that's the writing on the wall. I don't think anyone really knows everything. That's what I always say. But I think that, I think if I read it on a meme and social media, I believe about half of it.
Well, just remember, everybody can't be right at the same time, at least not very often.
So unless you're Kurt Signetti. I mean,
that's right.
Holy crap.
I mean, that could have thrown a wrench in the whole thing, right? What if it was Signetti they were hoping on, there was an offer, and he just said no? So now you're back to the drawing board. Like, who wants to coach at Florida right now? I don't.
Yeah, we got it. All this movement of these coaches is crazy. Brad Bellamy, general manager, Landers Ford. Folks, take the anxiety, throw that away. That worrying is like praying for something you don't want to happen. Ask for Brad Bellamy, the GM. Just get out there. Poplar and Houston Levy, LandersFordMemphis.com. Cannot get a better partner. Their name's on 6 stadiums in the Mid-South. They support every cause imaginable. Not just the Touchdown Club, La Bonheur Children's Hospital. That you talk about a corporate partner, Landers Ford. You'll love those people. Guys, thanks, everybody. We're going to wrap up, say something about other sponsors. Appreciate this. We'll do it again next week. All right. Thank y'all. Let me say something, too. Right down the street from Landers Ford is Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee. They are open every day of the week except Sunday. Now, Black Friday through Christmas, they'll be open on Sundays, okay? It's a big deal. They've got all the boots, over 7,000 pairs of men's and women's and kids' boots. Barber, Filson, Duckhead, everything imaginable. Charles Hall, Laura, AM, Raven, Lydia, the great people out there. Stuff's coming in new every day. We'll be putting the word out on a blast here soon about what's going on at Hewlett & Dunn. Also, Rumble Boxing Gym, Union and McLean in Midtown Memphis. How you fight is how you live. Hit that QR code, people. They're open every day, 5 o'clock in the morning. And Lights Out Gummies, Pro Athlete Temple Association. They work. Hit that QR code on the gummies, and you will get 25% off. Most often, we see the face of Christ and the least among us. Happy birthday, MJ. We love you. Everybody, appreciate you watching. Like and share. Have a great weekend. Stay tuned to this channel. We'll see you Monday.